Hey guys, tonight we slip out of our cozy beds and straight into a world of dirt floors, no electricity, and morning routines that will make you eternally grateful for indoor plumbing. You're about to wake up in a modest medieval cottage, the kind built with wattle and daub walls and just enough insulation to ensure your nose is an icicle by dawn. No alarm clock here. Just the rooster's screech and the clanging noise of your neighbour sharpening his scythe next door. The smell? A sharp cocktail of unwashed wool, fire smoke, and something suspiciously close to wet hay. And that's being generous. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment letting me know where you're listening from and what time it is there. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You roll over on a bed stuffed with straw, more accurately, a sack of straw that's slowly decomposing and full of itchy surprises. If you're lucky, it's only fleas and not a family of mice bunking with you. The blanket over you? Coarse wool, scratchy, musty. The kind that feels like it exfoliates and suffocates at the same time. Your first task of the day? Emptying the chamber pot. Yes, that clay pot beside your bed filled with everything you deposited overnight. There's no flush, obviously. Instead, you shuffle out into the bitter morning cold and dump it either in a communal cesspit or, if you're feeling particularly medieval, right out into the street. People in some towns literally had a phrase for it. Gardy-loo, shouted as a warning before waste rained from the windows above. You're now not just tired and sore, you're also part sanitation worker. Don't expect to wash up afterward though. Baths are rare and soap is a luxury. The average medieval peasant might bathe 2 to 3 times a year, less if they're worried water will open their pores to disease, which many believed. Your morning freshening up involves rubbing your face with a bit of cold water from a bucket and calling it a day. Maybe some scented herbs if you're wealthy or fancy. Maybe. Now, if you're thinking, hey, maybe I'll just brush my teeth and feel human again. Brace yourself. Toothbrushes don't exist yet, not unless you count a frayed stick or a cloth dipped in salt. Most people didn't even attempt oral hygiene, which means you're smelling a lot of medieval morning breath right about now, yours included. Oh, and did I mention you're likely sharing this tiny home with several people? The concept of personal space didn't quite exist in the 14th century. Your siblings sleep next to you. Your parents too, if they're still alive. Privacy is non-existent. And if you're a serf, your lord could walk in unannounced and demand you get to work. No working from home here, unless home is also a barn and work is hauling manure. Historians still argue whether medieval people had some form of quiet time in the early morning, but the general consensus is that the day started with a bang, or more accurately, with clatter, shouting, animals, and sheer chaos. The rooster might crow, but it's really the goats bleating and your neighbour arguing with his wife that drags you into consciousness. Once you're up, your body starts complaining immediately. Remember that bed? It wasn't exactly orthopedic. Your back is sore, your neck's stiff, and your legs are numb from the cold. But no one complains. Everyone aches. You're just one more creaky cog in the great feudal machine. Here's your first quirky tidbit. Some wealthier folks, especially in colder regions, actually wore hats to bed. Not as a fashion statement, but because the lack of insulation in homes meant your head could literally get too cold to sleep. Sleep caps weren't a goofy trope, they were survival gear. And let's not forget the insects. Fleas were everywhere. Some monasteries even had rules that monks shouldn't be annoyed by lice or fleas during prayer, which tells you just how common they were. If you're scratching right now just thinking about it, you're already ahead of the game. In the medieval world, you wouldn't even blink. After all this, you'd think you've earned a coffee. But no dice. Coffee won't show up in Europe until the 16th century. Your options? Maybe a sip of thin ale or diluted wine. Yes, even in the morning, since water is often contaminated. The ale is weak, barely fermented, and served at room temperature. just enough to hydrate you without immediately giving you dysentery. Now, let's talk about the psychological toll of this routine. You're constantly tired, always dirty, and vaguely anxious about the unpredictable world outside. There's no weather forecast, no police force to protect you, and definitely no sick days. If you're ill, you still work. If you're injured, tough luck. Just wrap it in linen and hope it doesn't turn black and fall off. And through all of this, you must obey the unspoken and very spoken rules of your feudal role. If you're a peasant, you're beneath your lord. If you're a woman, beneath your husband. And if you're a child, you're working too, chasing chickens, hauling water, or guarding sheep, even if you're only 6. Childhood isn't cute here. It's just unpaid labor in a smaller body. So, there you stand, chamber pot dumped, stomach growling, face half frozen, back aching, and your entire day of labor hasn't even begun yet. The sun's barely risen, but you're already behind. Welcome to medieval mornings, where every sunrise feels like a dare, and breakfast still feels like a fantasy. You shuffle back inside, nose running, feet numb, and stomach groaning like a church bell. It's breakfast time, or at least the medieval idea of it. Spoiler alert, there are no eggs. Benedict, no cinnamon swirled lattes, and definitely no oat milk. You're holding out hope for something hearty, but instead you find a small hunk of yesterday's bread, tough enough to double as a weapon. It's a little moldy around the edges, but just cut that off. Waste not, want not. You sit by the hearth, which still glows faintly from last night's fire. The warmth is weak, but you edge in close, trying to absorb what little heat you can. Your meal is stale, chewy, and dry. If you're fortunate, you might dip it in some broth or drizzle a bit of lard over it for flavor. Lard, that's your butter. Drink, no tea, no coffee. Those luxuries won't arrive in Europe for centuries. Instead, you sip something closer to liquid history, a mug of weak ale or watered-down wine. Why? Because the water in your village well might carry enough bacteria to knock you flat. Fermented drinks, even just a little bit, were safer. Yes, even for kids. Mommy, more beer please. Not exactly the slogan you'd expect, but here, perfectly normal. This is how you start your day. Chewing cardboard bread, sipping warm booze, and trying not to choke on a crumb while you mentally prepare for another 12 hours of back-breaking labor. Your teeth already hurt, half from yesterday's grain grit bread, and half because nobody's invented dental hygiene yet. Historians still argue whether medieval folk had ways to clean their teeth with herbal mixtures or chewed sticks, but the result was still a mouthful of decay by age 30. There's no variety. If you eat bread in the morning, guess what's for lunch and dinner? More bread, maybe turnips, possibly a spoonful of porridge if you're lucky, and the harvest hasn't failed? It's monotonous, grim, and if you're a peasant, you're probably malnourished. A lot of people didn't even know what full felt like. Hunger was constant, hovering around like an unwelcome ghost. We haven't even touched on how this bread is made. You, or someone in your household, likely ground the grain by hand. It's an hours-long process using a quern stone, and the flour it produces? Gritty, literally. Bits of stone end up in the bread, which means your teeth wear down like a set of medieval brake pads. Fun fact, archaeologists often find adult skeletons from this period with teeth worn almost flat. That wasn't a dental trend. It was just the price of eating bread. Oh, and let's not forget food laws. Some areas had regulations about who could bake bread and where. In cities, you might be required to use the Lord's oven, for a fee of course, and if you were caught baking your own without permission, punishable. Because even your sad little breakfast is taxable. If you're part of a noble household, things look a bit better but still not great. You might get meat, cheese, or eggs in the morning. But don't get too excited. The meat is salted beyond belief, preservation after all, and eggs are seasonal. Cheese might be soft or hard, depending on how old it is and how brave you're feeling. And speaking of danger, rats. You're always one crumb away from inviting a rodent guest. Medieval homes weren't sealed up like ours today. That loaf of bread you saved for tomorrow might have tiny bite marks by morning. Some families hung their food from the ceiling in baskets, like low-tech fridges. Still hungry? Too bad. The meal's over. There's no dessert, no second helping, and definitely no cute little to-go container. You wipe your hands on your tunic, which doubles as a napkin, and you head out the door with a belly barely satisfied and a day full of labour waiting to punish you. Outside, the village is stirring. Smoke rises from neighbouring chimneys. Chickens peck at frozen mud. Children run around barefoot, their feet tougher than leather. There's no morning news, no text alerts, only gossip and shouts travelling across the village square. You might hear about a new tax. You're already thinking about your next meal. But here's the catch. If you don't work, you don't eat. That means it's time to get to the fields, the stables, or the workshop. No sick leave, no breakfast buffet. And forget brunch. It's not a thing unless you count collapsing in the middle of the day and gnawing another crust of bread. By now, the weak sun is poking through the fog. Your body's warming up, but not enough to sweat. The hunger lingers. That chewy bread is sitting heavy in your gut. Your breath still smells like whatever passed for ale, and you've got a full day of labour ahead and 0 snacks to sneak. So yes, breakfast in the Middle Ages was technically a thing, but only technically. You're underfed, undercaffeinated, and already exhausted. The best part? You get to do it again tomorrow, and the next day, and the next, if you survive that long. The air outside is damp and smells like churned soil and livestock. Your feet squish into the muddy path leading out to the fields, your wooden clogs doing very little to keep the water out. Every step is a reminder that socks, as you know them, don't exist yet. You're probably wearing cloth wraps around your feet, or nothing at all, if yesterday's pair is still drying by the hearth. Hope you don't step on a nail because tetanus shots are centuries away. Your body aches, and you haven't even started working yet. Today's labour could involve tilling soil, hauling stones, or harvesting crops, depending on the season. The tools are crude. A wooden plough, maybe reinforced with some iron if your lord is particularly generous. The blade dulls quickly, and it's your job to keep it sharp, assuming you own a whetstone. Otherwise, you just push harder. You join a group of other peasants, mostly family, maybe a few neighbours. Conversation is minimal. You're too busy panting. Work starts with the sunrise and doesn't stop until it drops below the hills again. You'll break briefly for dinner, a midday meal that's just more bread, maybe with some onions or cheese if you're lucky. But for now, you just keep moving, back bent, hands raw, muscles screaming. You might be digging ditches or sowing seed. Each action is repetitive, brutal, and completely necessary. Miss a step, and the harvest fails. The harvest fails, and people starve. There's no grocery store fallback here, no corner deli to save the day. It's your effort or nothing. And here's the thing, the work is deeply unforgiving. There's no such thing as ergonomics. Tools are heavy and badly balanced. Carts have wheels that splinter. Ropes chafe your hands. You haven't had a proper bath in weeks, and the sweat dripping down your spine just turns to salt crust by midday. You feel every inch of your body slowly revolting. Here's a quirky tidbit for you. Medieval people believed that physical labour was noble, provided you were a peasant. If you were a noble and broke a sweat, it was a mark of shame. Physical effort was tied to class. So while you're bleeding your hands raw, your local lord is likely relaxing with a lute and deciding which cloak looks most intimidating today. Historians still argue whether peasants truly accepted their roles or if low-level resistance, like working slowly or stealing food, was more widespread than records suggest. But whether accepted or not, the labour kept grinding forward. And if you slack off, you're fined, or whipped, or worse. The Lord owns your land, your home, and technically, you. You glance around. Your neighbour's child is trudging along beside you, no older than 8, carrying a bundle of sticks twice her size. She's barefoot and silent, her eyes already dulled by the weight of expectation. Childhood, as we think of it, playing, learning, growing, is more of a poetic concept here. Most kids are just tiny adults with smaller tools. As noon nears, the sun begins to sting. There's no sunscreen, unless you count a fun fringe practice where some Egyptians used crocodile dung for sun protection. No one's doing that here, thank goodness, but the point stands. Your skin is at the mercy of the elements. You burn, you peel, and you keep working. Now imagine you sprain your ankle, or your wrist gives out from endless scythe swings. There's no cast, no ice, no rest it for a few days. You wrap it, bite down on something, and power through. Rest is a luxury, not a right. And let's not forget how this daily grind isn't limited to the countryside. If you're in a medieval town, your job might be smithing, tanning, weaving, or milling, each with its own special brand of misery. Tanners, for instance, soaked animal hides in urine to remove hair. Weavers inhaled lungfuls of dusty fibre all day. Millers dealt with heavy stones, deafening noise, and a thin layer of flour in every orifice. No, thank you. Then there are guilds. If you're lucky enough to be part of one, you might eventually learn a trade and improve your status. But first, years as an unpaid apprentice, fetching ale and sweeping floors until your master decides you're ready. Spoiler, he won't decide quickly. You pause for a drink of water, risky, but your only option. You scoop it from a stream. Upstream, someone's washing clothes. A little farther up, a pig's doing its business. It's basically medieval trail mix. Water, bacteria, and a chance to roll the disease dice. Your hands are blistered. Your back feels like it's permanently bent. And you're only halfway through the day. Lunch will be another hunk of bread and, if you're lucky, some beans or salted fish. The salt nearly cracks your lips, but you don't complain. No one does. Complaining is reserved for nobles or dying old men who've earned the right to moan a little. Suddenly, your neighbour lets out a yelp. He's caught his hand in the yoke. Blood flows freely. There's no ambulance coming, no first aid kit. Someone grabs a strip of fabric, maybe from their sleeve, and wraps it tight. That's it. That's the medical care. Maybe he'll be fine. Maybe he'll lose the hand. Life goes on either way. You keep working. In the distance, the bell from the manor rings. It's time to haul your tools home. Your muscles feel like they've been pressed under a cart. But you made it. Barely. Another day survived. So here's the daily grind, laid bare. Wake up sore, eat poorly, work until your body cries mutiny, and pray that tomorrow isn't worse. You don't complain. You can't. Because even this, blisters, bruises, and a constant crust of sweat, is considered the best case scenario. And if you're wondering why you wouldn't last a day in medieval times, well, you're only at lunchtime. You step outside into the murky morning light, your breath fogging faintly as the damp air clings to your clothes. The ache in your jaw has settled into a dull throb, and your stomach, though technically full, feels as though it's been lined with gravel. Still, there's no time to linger. Daylight is precious, and your survival depends on wringing every ounce of usefulness out of it. The work ahead is relentless. You're not some pampered court scribe with soft fingers and access to goose-feather quills. You're a peasant, and that means labour. Heavy, repetitive, body-breaking labour. Today's task: turn the soil for spring planting. That means grabbing your wooden-handled hoe, splintered from years of use, and heading out to the strips of land your village collectively farms. Remember the phrase, feudal system from school. Here's where it comes to life. You don't own this land. The lord of the manor does. You just rent it with your blood, sweat, and maybe your firstborn. You work the land, and in return, he lets you stay alive on it. Fair is not a word that comes up much. You trudge through the fields, boots squelching in the muddy ground. The land is damp from last night's rain. No tractors, no gloves, no ergonomic tools. Just you, the cold wind, and a patch of earth that resents being disturbed. The work begins. You swing the hoe downward and feel the jolt run through your shoulders. Again, again. Your breath puffs harder now. Mud cakes your ankles. And this isn't just one neat field. It's a patchwork of scattered strips called open fields. You and your neighbours each have narrow rows, making it communal and chaotic. There's no privacy. Everyone sees your technique, or your lack of it. Strip farming, as it's known, was the system of the day. One big communal jigsaw of arable land. Historians still argue whether it was efficient or just the best option given the technology. Either way, it's exhausting. And you're not halfway done. You stop for a second to stretch your back. It cracks so loudly you scare off a nearby bird. You try to ignore the sharp sting in your lower spine. That's not going away. Not today, not ever. Chronic pain is a life partner now. Someone nearby, possibly Oswin, the man with 2 good teeth, sings while he works. It's a rough tune, in a dialect you barely understand. But it keeps the rhythm. You try to join in, but your voice croaks like you've been chewing gravel. Probably because you have chewed gravel. Remember breakfast? You wipe your brow with a sleeve stiff with last week's soup and bend down again. The soil is sticky and stubborn. You find a worm. That's good luck maybe. Then you find something harder. A rock? Nope, it's a bone. Human, most likely. Shallow graves and farming don't mix well. You drop it back into the earth and pretend you didn't see it. Midway through the morning, someone yells. A ploughshare's broken. A mule's wandered off. A child's fallen into a ditch. Just another Tuesday. You keep your head down because helping might mean being roped into more work. You're already behind. Your hands start to blister. No gloves, remember? Just raw skin against wood. The friction is unforgiving. One of the open sores begins to weep a little. Infection is a looming threat. You recall that your cousin once died from a splinter. You try not to think about it. A weird buzzing starts in your ears. Is it dehydration? Is it the bat-dropping potion from earlier kicking in? Or is it the call of the village bell? Lunchtime? No, too early. Someone's been accused of stealing. Again. You glance back toward the manor house perched like a vulture above the village. The Lord Steward rides out with 2 men-at-arms. You lower your eyes. You're just a field hand, invisible. You want to stay that way. And speaking of staying invisible, let's talk about clothing. Your tunic is made of coarse wool. Not because you love rustic fashion, but because it's the only thing that holds up to wear and weather. Underneath, maybe a linen shirt, if you own more than one. Most people don't. And underpants? Optional, if not mythical. Your clothes are itchy, damp, and never truly clean. Washing them means beating them on rocks down at the river. Lye soap if you have it, burns your skin. Still, you'll probably do it later today because the fleas are getting bold again. A wind picks up, cold, sharp, and unrelenting. It cuts through your tunic like a knife through butter that doesn't exist yet. You shiver. There's no coat, no thermal layer. Just layers of fatigue and the vague hope you'll warm up from moving faster. You look over at a neighbour, a woman in her 40s who looks 70. She's got a baby strapped to her back and a hoe in her hand. The baby's got a runny nose and a rash. Probably teething, probably sick, definitely loud. The village dog trots by with a rabbit in its mouth. It belongs to no one and everyone. It's mangy, limping, and probably carrying fleas the size of rice grains. But you envy it. It doesn't have taxes. Taxes. Right. That's coming too. You'll owe the Lord a portion of your grain, your livestock, if you had any, your time, and maybe even a chicken or two. There's also the church tithe, 10% of everything. Even suffering is taxable here. You keep digging, working your way down the strip. The soil clings to your boots like an insult. Your muscles burn. Your lips crack. You find another worm. Still lucky? You don't know. The sun peeks out from behind the clouds for one glorious moment. It's immediately hidden again. Of course. A curious fact. In some regions, villagers would talk to their soil, curse it, beg it, or bless it. Farming wasn't just practical, it was spiritual. Life depended on the whims of the dirt beneath your feet. Some folks left small offerings. Others just cried quietly and hoped. You pause at the end of your row. One strip down, several to go. You glance at the sun, barely past noon. You've got another 8 hours of this ahead, unless it rains. Then it'll be worse. You rub your hands together, feel the raw skin pull painfully, and shoulder your hoe again. Every step is a prayer, and not the hopeful kind. Morning doesn't arrive, it ambushes you. There's no alarm clock, just the rooster's shrill crow somewhere beyond the walls and the cold slap of air on your face when someone cracks the door open. You groan. Every joint protests. Your back feels fused and your neck has become a living question mark. But no one's waiting for you to ease into the day. The fire's out, the room's freezing, and someone's already stomping around trying to reheat yesterday's porridge. You stand, slowly, carefully. The straw bed has left lines on your cheek and itchy red blotches on your arms. You scratch lazily, then sniff your armpits, a futile habit you've inherited from your 21st century self. It doesn't help. No one smells good. Ever. Scent is something you survive, not correct. A bath might be weeks away, and even then, it's likely to be a cold one in reused water shared by multiple people. You're fifth in line? Good luck. Breakfast is, shockingly, more bread. Sometimes cold porridge. Occasionally milk, if the cow is healthy, unpregnant, and not being milked by your neighbour in secret. You eat fast. There's no savouring, no conversation. The day waits for no one, least of all you. Today's task isn't in the fields. It's your week to help repair the road, a muddy mess rutted by cartwheels and hoofprints. No municipal team is arriving with orange vests and reflective tape. It's just you, a few neighbours, and tools that look like they were designed by someone who hated ergonomics. You take a crude spade and begin scooping dirt. Your hands blister instantly. Again. While you work, your mind drifts. Maybe you wonder what happens to people who don't pull their weight. They disappear from the village, quietly. Some starve. Some get thrown in the stocks for a day. Yes, those real wooden frame things where your head and hands stick through, and people throw rotten vegetables. A medieval Yelp review. But worse than punishment is debt. If you owe grain to your lord and can't pay, he might take your tools, or your oxen, or your child to serve in his household until the debt is forgiven. That's legal. Entire families can collapse under one bad harvest, one dry season, one illness. The line between survival and ruin is thinner than your shirt. You hear a distant church bell. Not for prayer. Not this time. It's tolling to announce a death. You glance at the others. No one looks up. They just keep digging. Life continues. People die. No funerals with flower arrangements and life stories here. Just a quick burial and back to work before the sun sets. Here's your mainstream historical fact of the day. Life expectancy in medieval times averaged around 30 to 40 years. But not because people dropped dead in middle age. If you made it past childhood, you stood a decent chance of reaching your 50s or even 60s. The real killer was infant mortality. Half the village's children might not make it to their 5th birthday. And that means having children becomes both a necessity and a gamble. You need them to help with labour, to support you in old age, to pass on your name. But each pregnancy carries enormous risk. No hospitals, no sterilised tools, just a midwife with a knife and prayers. 1 in 3 women might die from childbirth complications. It's terrifying. It's expected. Historians still argue whether midwives were respected professionals or constantly teetering on the edge of witchcraft accusations. They carried knowledge passed down through generations about herbs, delivery techniques, and anatomy. But their status was always uncertain. Respected 1 year, burned the next. You break from work to relieve yourself. There's no toilet, Just a designated patch behind a bush, or a wooden bench with a hole over a pit if you're lucky. The smell is unspeakable. The risk of infection? Pretty much guaranteed. Hygiene is more about ritual than science. People believe certain odors keep sickness away. And ironically, some bathe less to protect their humors from disruption. You return to work. Hours blur. By the time you're dismissed, you're too tired to speak. You walk home in silence, muscles like jelly, fingers blackened with dirt. Tonight, the meal is marginally better. Someone traded for a turnip and a bit of lard. The stew tastes like wet socks, but it's warm, and warmth is currency now. You eat. You stare into the fire. You wonder if life will always be this. Someone starts humming. It's an old folk song about lost love, or maybe a harvest gone wrong. You can't tell. The melody is haunting, and for a moment, you almost forget your situation. Then the wind howls through the chinks in the walls, and the illusion breaks. Your thoughts turn inward. What if you fall sick tomorrow? Who would care for you? There's no hospital, no antibiotics, no modern medicine, just folk cures and faith. Garlic for a cough, leeches for swelling. A poultice of mashed herbs and hope. You lay down early, not because you're sleepy, but because there's nothing else to do. Your stomach aches a little. Was that turnip even fresh? You shift on the straw mattress, curling into yourself. And now it's time. The pace slows, the fire dims, your muscles surrender to the warmth, however faint. Outside, the wind has softened. The stars overhead, unfiltered by light pollution, twinkle like chipped glass in black velvet. An owl hoots in the distance, low and slow. The house creaks, but you're used to its voice now. It's the same lullaby every night. Your breathing steadies. The flickering rushlight casts a final glow before vanishing into darkness. The goat sighs in its sleep. Someone next to you snores softly, rhythmically. You're part of this little world now, this strange, brutal, oddly peaceful rhythm. And despite everything, your bruises, your hunger, the chill in your toes, there's a kind of quiet, not joy, not safety, but survival. And in this age, that's as close to peace as it gets. So, now the fire has burned to coals, the voices have hushed, and the flicker of the past has dimmed like a candle at midnight. Your journey through the hardest day of medieval life comes to its close, not with a grand finale, but with the simple silence of exhaustion. You've earned your sleep a dozen times over. Let the aches fade into the background now. Loosen the tightness in your jaw. Let the muscles in your shoulders melt just a little. You're no longer carrying buckets or swinging tools. Just the gentle weight of a wool blanket. Or maybe it's just your sheets, soft and familiar. That's right. You're back in your bed now. Modern comforts waiting patiently around you. Breathe in slowly. Hold. Let it out gently. You're safe. You're warm. You're still here. Tomorrow won't require you to gather firewood or fear the sound of a church bell. Tomorrow, your meals will be seasoned, your toilet will flush, and your bed won't scratch. So let the echo of the past remain just that, an echo, fading with each breath. You don't have to outrun the plague or kneel before your Lord. You've outlived this day, and that's enough. So close your eyes, rest your hands, and let sleep come, like dusk over a quiet medieval field.